Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to day 2 of the Tools of High Magic conversations. So today we're talking about chalices and their different variations. I'd like to welcome Paul and Mike today. Guys, you want to go and give a little bit of your background as far as what brings you here today?
Yeah, sure. Same as yesterday, but
Hey, you know, for those that didn't catch yesterday's.
yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem. I was raised Christian, and then I became a Christian. Don't ask how that went, but anyway, I got into being a pastor, and it led me to learning Hebrew, where I then learned Hebrew and practiced the Torah. Got into doing Torah codes and learned Paleo Hebrew. Eventually, that led me into King Solomon's writings, which led me to where I'm at today, being a practitioner of Solomon and his magic, understanding the things that he was doing with the necromancy, the claromancy, the stonomancy, the things that he was doing was fascinating to me. Which ultimately led me to practicing Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus's material. I just found natural law hermeneutics to be fascinating, so I started to learn about hermeneutics and astrology and biochemistry, and that's when I shortly realized that looking through all these mythologies, it's telling me that there's a creator of everything, but it's not as man explains it to you. It's in a much deeper level. It's in everything in life. It's in every pattern. It's in it's in the magic that you do. It's like you are God in a way, and that's why my name is the Divine Sorcerer, because really we are all divine. We're from a divine entity. Like, we come from the earth. When we die, we go back to the earth. What does that mean? Well, the earth is made from the same thing that is made from the stars. We are of the stars, which means we are a divine being. So, whichever way you look at it, you're a magical person. It's just, do you understand the magic you behold? A lot of people don't, because they never woke up after the Dark Ages. So now you got me, who is a follower of Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus, and hold my hero high as King Solomon. And that's what I got. Necromancy and spread paranormal and what I do today.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Paul, do you want to give any background on where you come into the magical picture, as it were?
Yeah.
Your history?
Yeah, by all means. I was born and raised Catholic. Kind of fell out with both the Catholic schools and the Catholic Church at about the age of 12, when I got kicked out of private Catholic school. Apparently, my view of the Divine Mary and other people's view of the Divine Mary don't match, and the Immaculate Conception. During my teenage years, I got very big into the goth scene. Started to go down the sanguine route for quite some time. Then with that, after that, joining the army, a few things happening in the army while I was in the army. Coming out of it, there had to be more, and that's basically when I started my experimentation, my research, my looking into things, and that's when I came upon divination, and that's pretty much where a large part of my practice is, divination, but I also obviously deal with crystals, stones, grids, the usual kind of stuff. Looking to get into Celtic stuff, looking also at necromancy, and obviously just becoming better, not only as a person, but as a witch. I don't follow any strict Parthenon. I'm solitary. I'm just me.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Paul, you're relatively new to the kind of things that I get up to, so I'll give you a little bit of background. I've been writing since 2009. I've been a published author, 3 books through Amazon that sell regularly. The Grimoire of Arts is the one that I do a workshop for every weekend. So you're totally welcome to come and check that out every Saturday as well. So there's a large community of us growing slowly over the years as I've been teaching people different layers of occultism and things like that. And I'm about practical magic. I'm about the stuff that works because of the science behind it. And so, you know, I've had over here in the States, they have the Universal Life Church, and I've had my holy orders of that since 2007, July 7th, 2007. So 7707. Go figure.
Wow.
Yeah, right. That was an accident. I did not plan for that. It was just the day that I did all the paperwork. So it works out. And today is 2022. So it's like fitting full circle, like, let's do shit for the sun. So I incorporate a lot of high magic and a lot of holy magic in my stuff. So calling on the names of God, having the associations with those kinds of forces, and understanding the power that moves behind it being a celestial order, not of a terrestrial one. So I deal very little with local gods. I deal very little with pantheons and entities on this planet as often as possible. There are rituals that I was given. One of them was back in 2012 when I was given an initiation ritual into the entry of Duat to meet the Netcher back in 2012. And that was when the Earth aligned with the galactic center for a once in its 26,000 year cycle. It was in direct alignment to the, you know, center of the Milky Way. So everything across the horizontal plane of our universe and its connections has allowed for some really interesting insight when it comes to connecting with the intelligences of the stars and practicing things from Taoist sorcery, shamanism, both from that which you can find in aspects of Russian and Slavic magic, but as well as First Nations people here in the US and stuff down in South America as well. So I try to incorporate a global practice, but again, I try to make it not entity specific. So the less entities we have mucking about in our work, the better. However, the work that I do is centered on creating our own spirits, creating from the material that we use, the spirits that are within it, and creating an entity that will serve our purpose specifically from it. Applying necromancy, but not pulling on things that are associated with the demonic or the heavenly. We're just pulling upon the spirits of the world that we form into patterns that will enact our spells with us, for us, in alignment with us. I've conjured the spirits of the brass vessel for students and clients before. I've done mummification magic to bind people together, and a bunch of other different types of high-level ritual magic that requires the use of some really interesting ingredients. And so of those ingredients, we get into the conversations, the tools that I use, and the way that I've applied them over the last 23 plus years of practice, right? So I got back into this stuff back in the late 90s. I had some mentors between 2000 and 2004 when I was living in Northern California, different shop owners and things like that that would teach me grid magic, spirit summoning. They were the managers of bookstores. So we had all of the books, stuff that was just rare and obscure that they brought in. And that way I had an opportunity to read and work with those, as well as a bunch of different mentors across the years, getting into professional practices over the last 8, doing works for clients and things like that. So quite a robust applied application of all of this stuff. So that way it's like, I try not to be too wordy, but there is a lot of shit like, let's do magic, let's do witchcraft, let's do it in whatever way we can do it, you know, and let's just make it as clear and as clean as possible. So that way it doesn't, you don't have those nasty attachments of, well, in my tradition, the Holy Grail is the only cup. Well, in your tradition, that was a person, right? Or is it like the application of faith to an object, or the different materials that that object is made out of? They function in different capacities. And so cups are the conversation today. Yesterday we did the video for the wands and the different ways that you can pull the spirits of the sylphs through those spirits of the wood, of the minerals, of the different things. So you can use it as a conduit to channel energies of the natural world. So it becomes an ally in your practice. Chalices work a lot the same way. And in that practice, we have different materials, stuff that are natural materials and stuff that's unnatural materials. Unnatural materials would be your plastics, right? You don't want to incorporate plastic unless you're doing stuff that's reverencing child magic, the spirits of children. There is one of the local spirits in San Francisco. His name is Emperor Norton. He was the Emperor of the United States. Recognized in the 1800s only in the local area as the local kook for San Francisco. He, at his graveside, people leave offering of plastic toys, of plastic objects, cups, things like that. They're plastic. They're childlike, to represent the childlike whimsy that he brought to San Francisco. And it's really interesting the history of that entity, because he's become a guardian genus for that area. So you can go petition him as a local spirit in the same way that if you're down in New Orleans, you can leave offerings at the graves of Murray Laveau. You can do different graveside offerings and things like that. If you're taking like the Mardi Gras beads and the plastic beads and things like that, you can leave those at the graveside for offerings to those spirits to whom it means a lot. But generally in witchcraft, you want something that's going to have an energy flow through, right? Glass is really good because it's pretty much inert, right? So you can use it as an offering glass. You put your offering glass on the altar with your water in it. I've got water and rice in mine, 1 cup of rice, 1 cup of water, which I need to clean and refresh. And you can generally tell how happy the spirits are with you if there are bubbles in your water, right? Like if it's comes out of your faucet and it's been sitting still and there's no bubbles or there's no condensation. But if you put it on your altar after a couple of days and you start to see bubbles appear, that's generally the presence of spirits, according to Hoodoo traditions, root working traditions of the Southern Americas. So it's a really fantastic way to test the cleanliness of your region, also, like of the area that you've got it in, have bubbles, or if you're doing something that's out of sync with your spirits, then you would need to do something that would correct that. But otherwise, you just use glass as your offering. Now, when you're using things like the metal chalice or ceramic, in this case, the region that the ceramic comes from is also just as important as the type of vessel that it is. So this one here is made from ceramic from San Diego, which is where I'm currently living. It's got the lid, and the idea of this one is that it's supposed to function as a spirit pot. Now this one is red and black. I have one that is blue and white that actually has the ingredients inside of it, which I use for spirit communion. It's got a crystal in there and a rabbit pelt. So I'll put out the rabbit pelt, put the crystal on it, and ask the spirit of the rabbit to bring the spirit that I'm looking to interact with into the crystal. So that way I get that scrying and I get that interaction with that entity specifically. And I keep that stored on my altar at the highest possible elevation in my apartment. That makes sense for all the statuary and things to stay in one spot. So, cleansing your objects and things like that, you can use a variety of different herbs to do so. And get that list for you, so that way you've got a quick reference to like the herbs and such that you can use. And all of the books are about to fall over. No, we did it. The books are
Good books.
Good books. It's a good book. All right. So just to go over like the different types of things that you can do when you're considering your tools, right? Like you consider who made it. Is it a local craftsman to the area that you're looking to call on these things from, right? Is it an international person? Like this vessel that I use for a lot of my cleansing ceremonies comes from Ireland, right? So when my mother was on vacation over there, I'm able to use the land and the water that I put into it to bless it as like the Holy Isles, right? Like the northern area. Cleansing herbs, according to witchcraft traditions and things like that, for your chalices are a combination of peppermint, chamomile, rosemary, and dragon's blood. Whereas if
Okay.
you're going to be doing, you're feeding the wand, like I mentioned yesterday, that would be like bay leaf, dragon's blood, rosemary, chamomile, and European mandrake. Now you want to be careful with the European mandrake because you don't want to poison yourself if you're smoking your wands and such. But like cauldrons is the glorified version of the chalice and the cup, but it has an entirely different set of function. The cauldron can have its own day as far as I'm concerned, because basically that was where people came to eat. That's where spirits would gather around. And so the cauldron is an anchor for drawing spirits to you. So it's a summoning vessel, whereas this is an offering vessel, right? And so the cleansing of those or the feeding of the cauldron would include lavender, chamomile, rosemary, and the mandrake as well. Whereas like blades, you could use chamomile, dragon's blood, and bay leaf, right? So it shifts just a little bit depending on what ingredients that you use to cleanse or to feed the spirit within it, right? And with the chalice that I use primarily, it's plated in silver and lined in gold. So I went fancy with mine. So it's 24 karat gold on the inside of this. It's also got the stainless steel pentacle inside. And at the very bottom, I keep grave dirt. So it quite literally is a housing for spirit evocation. So on top of the pentagram inside of here, I'll put the crystal of summons, or I'll put whatever it is that I'm doing. And then it goes into that as a place of origin, right? Like they would use gold as a means to stop manifestation falling through it. So in summoning and evocation magic for Enochian magic, for example, John Dee's scrying ball was half coated in gold, so that way nothing would go through. So what you can do is you can put the crystal ball into here, which I do, and the gold prevents the shit from falling out the bottom, so to speak. So it acts more of a scrying vessel than it does as an offering vessel. So for my use, that's why I went for the $200 fucking thing. So just be aware that you can find some good stuff on Amazon. And if it's gold plated, it doesn't have to be solid. You're just getting the gold involved into it. So that way it creates the barrier for those spirits so that they don't go loose. Because if you're using a scrying ball, right, it creates a 360-degree rotation, which basically makes it a little mini black hole. And so the more contained you have it in your summoning space, in your ritual space, in this case, using the grave dirt with the sphere, then I can conjure the spirits from the grave into the sphere and I can scribe with them. I can use that as my anchorage.
So the black and gold bowl would be a good idea and a good practice to be doing.
You can, so like with this one, right? This one you can use, like I use this one like for animal totem work. So for nature spirits, stuff that doesn't require, not being able to go freely through it. The earth from the ceramic one is more for like the fae spirits, the animal totems, or harmless-ish dead people. Whereas the metal one is going to be more for the celestial intelligences, the infernal intelligences. Both of them can have the grave dirt mixed into the substance that you keep inside of it. Both of them can have crystals in there. Both of them can have objects of faith, such as the rosary, such as the crystals, the pentacle, things like that. Now, the reason I bring in the rosary is because it's not about your faith. It's about the faith of the spirit that you're working with.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. It has shit fuck all, pardon my language, to do with your personal beliefs. It has everything to do with what the person you're summoning, the spirit you're working with, that you're giving offering to, or that you're dealing with an interaction, especially if you're creating a vessel like this one, where it's going to be a long-term relationship between you and those spirits, right? It has everything to do with what they believed in life, because it's by that belief that you can call them back, or that you can relate to them better. So even if you don't believe in a particular chant or a mantra, but they said the Holy Rosary prayer 4 or 5 times a day, to them, that was a symbol of their faith, and it tied their spiritual vibration to that mantra, to that chant, to that prayer. So that way, through that, you can establish a connection to that kind of behavior that would allow you to interact with their spirit over a long period of time, regardless of if they are still incarnated or not. So if you have their name, you can make the sigil on the planetary square of their birth. You can create an image through which that spirit can be anchored. And then by doing things that they repeated in life, you're able to connect to them on a spiritual level and therefore get your manifestations more streamlined in that capacity.
Would that work for language as well?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
So this
Okay.
is why earlier today I was asked by another gentleman, why do I use Sumerian when I call on things like Ishtar or Shamash or Inanna or Marduk and things like that? It's because those are the Sumerian names of the planets, and the Sumerians were the first ones that did the celestial heavens, right? They're the first ones that had the mathematics to plot the orbits of the moons of Saturn. They are there's a fantastic text. It's the Cuneiform Tablets in Celestial Astronomy. It was a book put out by MIT that has like the Sumerian tablet, the mathematics, and the words and everything in like that as well. Babylonian Magic and Sorcery by Leonard King is also a fantastic resource for getting into the origin of these original entities. And so you can use it in Greek, you can use it in Latin, you can use it in modern English. But if you're using it in Greek, right, and you're calling upon, what is it, Oranos, right? Oranos is Olympus. So when you call upon Oranos, you're calling upon the gateway to Olympus. So you're calling upon the threshold of the gods themselves, right? And you can reference that in the Techniques of Greco-Egyptian Magic by Stephen Skinner, right? So it's not as cut and dry as the West would have it, where in a lot of modern practices and such, it's they try to limit the importance of the transmigration of people, because the transmigration of people through history also determines where the spirits are going, where the cultures are interacting, what trade routes were being applied. Not stuff that blends Eastern Taoist sorcery with Greek magic and Western magic because of the trade routes that occurred through Eastern Europe, and therefore the shamanism and the tribes and all of those things, right? And so the preservation of specific rituals and the use of the saints and the use of the orisons and things like that, depending on the way that you call these things forth, depends on what becomes a sacred vessel, right? And so in a lot of traditions, the chalice represents the body that receives, right? And so in the body that receives is the blood, and then by the blood, the blessing of the blood creates the living attachment to that community, right? It is, unfortunately, a vampire cult. You're eating a blood and you're drinking a blood and eating a flesh, right? And so when you incorporate that into things like a chalice, if you share blood, you mentioned the sanguinum, which is fantastic, is if you're
like
doing that, you
sounded
create a
like
hive.
talking about Christianity and Catholicism there, eating the blood and drinking of the flesh.
Right. And so you can create a community connection between basically the sacred energies of what it is you're working with and the collective that you're working in. So you can use a chalice and blood magic mixed with the wine, mixed with the herbs and everything like that, to create resonance between multiple parties. And so one of the things that I do in my work is I use ritual teas. I use specific herbs that I put into the chalice, and then I drink and consume that after it's been blessed in the vessel within the offering of the spirits, right? Or there's something that will allow me to bond spirits to the liquid medium and then consume the spirits and then spiritually devour them, right? Their energy then becomes compressed in with mine, so that we form a union between my body and their spirit. And so then I can use that during a temporary possession in order to be able to enact the ritual that I'm about to do. So you can use chalices as the anchor for that. Like I've got one that's made out of acacia wood. It's what I was looking for, and I don't remember where it wandered off to, but it's got the 7 aspects of the planets that were made on the squares of the numerical squares of the planet. So each of the 7 symbols burned into the acacia wood, and acacia remembers, and that was the wood of augmentation and manifestation that they used to line the Temple of Solomon with. So it's not metaphorical. It is quite literal. What was that?
I did a whole study on acacia wood, the Ark of the Covenant, everything, how it was put together, like the actual, acacia wood.
Acacia wood is
like there was a lot of ingredients that was lined in gold. Yeah.
Exactly. And so when you incorporate these kinds of elements into your ritual practice, the more that you understand the overlay between what they've been doing for thousands of years with the Christian mythologies and the application of it in high magic as a means to bond a community together, right? You're all drinking from the same cup. You're all sharing the same diseases and the biology and all of the things. If there's, one cup for many people, right? Nowadays, we can't do that because of the pandemic. So now we're living in the after times. Like there was the before times, and now there's the after times.
The new normal.
BP and AP.
Mhm. Exactly. And so, when people are blessing the wine and the sacramental blessings and all of that, it is quite fantastic because you're literally imbuing the spirit of the land into the spirit of heaven. And one of the fantastic things is I studied as a bartender in Vegas for a while, and learning about the nuances of how they make wine, the side of the hill, the degree of the sun, how many hours a day of the sun, what trees are growing around, what plants are growing around, and what other flavors you can elicit because of the local environment. They call it terroir. Basically, it's the spirit of the land that comes out in the wine as it's aging in the barrels, right? In the same way that in Scotland, if you're distilling whiskey, you have certain ones that are put into the oak barrels and you get more of the coastline, or you get more of the peat, or you get more, depends on the region, right? And so you get the regional spirit. Literally, it's a spirit, it's alcohol, and you're sharing that spirit with your people. You're linking them to the land. You're linking them to the community. You're bonding that community together, right? And it's a really fantastic way to create unity, albeit forced unity, within a collective. And it allows for a hive mind, a local egregore, to basically run through the individuals that share of the same spell. And blessing of the wine, blessing of the water, all of those things is a sharing of that same energy, so that they become vessels for that energy, and they're able to channel it temporarily longer. This is why you would do the sacrament every Sunday, so that way you would bring down that energy into your collective, and you would empower them to go forth into the world as that extension. And then over that week, it would deteriorate, and you would need to repeat, and so on, right? So keeping that
next time I get drunk, I'm not actually getting drunk. I'm just renewing my sacrament.
There you go.
Precisely.
There we go. Perfect.
You're renewing your connection to the spirit.
There we go.
And one of the things too is like, why is the rum sacred? Right? Well, in ATR traditions, rum is super sacred because of the blood that was shed on the land. It was the spirits that died making the cane, cutting the cane, boiling the cane, all of the horrors that were endured that absorbed into the land and into the cane. So you're basically giving the ancestors their spirits back.
So that would be voodoo?
Yeah.
Voodoo?
That would be Palo, voodoo, hoodoo, New Orleans voodoo, Kimbisa, Ifa, a bunch of
Santeria.
things. It's like alphabet soup, but
Yeah.
that is a version of Catholicism that was saved by Catholicism. And those are traditions that are closed, meaning that they're active practices. People do carry the license to be able to work with those kinds of things in a very controlled way. I do not. As a gay man, I'm not allowed to go participate in Palo or certain rites of voodoo. I'm not allowed to get initiated into those because it's a very straight environment. Straight men, straight women, each one of them have their own roles as priests and priestesses. So the Mambos and the Hungans have separate roles. They're only allowed to do certain things at specific times of the day or specific times of the year. Their taboos are restrictive because they are the embodiment of the spirits that they take on. And that would be the initiation rites that they do, right? That would be them becoming the Nganga or Tata Nganga for the men, right? Or if they're going to become a Polera, right? And they literally take the ashes and they mix it with their blood. So they carry within them the ancestors. So it's non-broken lineage. It's those same spirits in their corpses and their ashes and all of that. They still mix with the living body and they become the extension vessel of the walking graveyard. They become walking with those spirits they carry inside of them. By their blood, it becomes living. Therefore, the body becomes a chalice for the other world, right? And so using that association where the body becomes the chalice and the blood within the body tethers that spirit and can bond that spirit with others. So when you consume the blood of others through sanguine rites and things like that, you're bonding your spirit, your pranic, your chi, your embodiment of the divine with their embodiment of the divine. And so you're creating basically in miniature the return of the divine in multiple bodies. So as you consume their blood, they consume yours, you create the Ouroboros.
Yes.
So it makes it fantastic.
And they were, yeah, you can even go back earlier. They were doing that in the time of Moses. Moses used to get drunk on wine.
Mm-hmm.
He was known for getting drunk on wine.
Yeah. There is research that I've been doing, and I've found that when you're using sacrament, especially wine or hard alcohols, right, as it goes through its process of change, not only does it go through its process of change and it absorbs the spirits of the land and the plants that are going on, but it also allows your hidden mind to speak. So speaking with the double head, the Janus head, right, your hidden mind, your subconscious gets to speak. Your conscious mind gets shut down and you'll do a bunch of crazy shit if you can't control your drink. But in that hidden mind, it is an aspect of the true self. Whereas if you can rectify that which is hidden and that which is known to you, you won't have an alcoholism problem. You'll have a communication problem between your two selves. There's a part of you that needs to express something. There's a part of you that can't express something. So through the medium of alcohol, you're giving that spirit authority to rise through you and speak in a possession. So that makes my work with alcohol quite interesting. And that makes, like I said, I trained as a bartender. So the spiritual effects of alcohol on an individual, the temporary writing of a secondary spirit within them that gives them the means to speak their truths, right? It might be hard, it might be fucked up, it might be a perspective-based thing, but it's still that spirit that's coming through them and using them as a mouthpiece. But it's not using their conscious mind, it's using their subconscious mind, it's using their spirit within them, right? And if they get set off and they start doing violent things, they've got things that they have to work through. They have issues that need to be sorted through. If they have depression or sadness, they're trying to get that spirit out of them, or they're trying to commune with that spirit in a way where it needs to seek resolution of some kind. Just because you know the spirit's there, you still have to do the actions to get rid of it, right? Or to purify it, or to recall it, or to elevate it, or do something with it. Getting drunk isn't the purpose. It's the communion with the spirit that you get that better relationship from it. And it becomes non-addictive. It becomes not corrosive, right?
Wow.
So that's where I go with it. But I'm gonna
that would sum up a certain part of my life very, like, so accurately. It's not even funny. Wow.
So high magic, man. High magic is such a weird way to do life, but parallels between tangible interaction with these chemicals that we're putting into our body, these things that we're associating with, even smoking the tobacco to bring that spirit into you while you're connecting to the divine energies, right? To give it a clarification, to give it offering, to give it a union between the outside world and the inside world, liquid mediums that go in offering form, like we're offering this to the gods and only them, right? Like there's Egyptian rituals where in that one that I referenced that I did back in 2012 that was prepared for me, there was a thing called red beer. It was made to the Egyptian standard. It's not for humans to consume because it would be poisonous by modern day standards. But red beer is the thing that was put into the Nile to get Sekhmet to stop her rampage, basically getting her drunk in order for her not to end the world. So using that as an offering, when it's done, when you're done with your ceremony, you pour it onto the earth. You give it back to the spirits of the earth, right? Because it's made from substance of the earth. It's made from substance of the air because of the wild yeast, right? So blending things where nature otherwise has a hand in it, but nature could not produce it without the hand of man, is where you also get the interaction why alcohol and spirits and the communions and things like that is what does nature lack that it otherwise wouldn't have on its own, right? This is why giving offering to spirits, giving the blood, giving fruits, giving vegetables, giving wine, giving water, all of those things are incredibly important because in certain places, they're not naturally occurring. They have to be brought there. They have to be given to those spirits so that things can thrive. And so in that way, creating the collective, creating that hive mind unity behind everything, it allows for that to happen. It allows for, you know, water to be safe to drink if you mix it with wine because the wine kills the bacteria in it. It allows for the jubilation of the community if they come together and they drink together, right? It's a bonding, it's a connecting. And so you have this shared experience that the cup symbolizes, right? And so when you incorporate that into your practice, you're bringing the spirits in for a drink, you're bringing them in for communion, you're bringing them in for community, you're bringing them in because it's going to connect you to them and them to you and to the spell that you're doing. And you're going to hopefully ask them through your ritual and through the ways that your ritual comes together, that you have that unification so that when you pour the glass of wine and you say your blessing, or you pour your water and you say your blessing, it functions to all of these myriad things. But you didn't even have to think about those because that's the symbolism. That's what the history about all this shit is. All you're doing is worrying about what's in your cup. And are you giving it to the earth? Are you giving it to the river? Are you giving it to the crossroads? Are you giving it to the dead in the graveyard? Like all of those different things. And that's just, you know, depending on how the water flows, right? Depending on where you need to give offering. Are you taking dirt from a graveyard, give water to the spirits, right? So you pour water on the grave and you take dirt from the grave, you know, you give one for the other. If you're taking dirt from a tree, give water to the tree. If you're taking a branch from the tree, feed the tree water, right? Or a bush, same idea. And you bless the water beforehand. You give it an empowerment so that it can recover the spirit that you extract from the intermediary that you're working with. So it creates a relationship. It creates a communion between those forces that you're dealing with and yourself and your practice, creating a through line so that everything works together as unity. So that's how I deal with chalices and cups and things like that in my practice. How have you guys observed those in your practices? Less intense, of course, I'm sure, but I'm a huge fucking nerd, so, you know.
Okay, so when I use a bowl and water in the past, not so much now because the medium I use is different now, but I had a particular bowl that was a particular color that had a gold rim, and I actually took to inscribing in, I mean, I speak fluent German, French, Italian, and Russian. One of the spirits that I would communicate with would only talk to me in French. And he would always start the conversation exactly the same way. And I ended up scribing that into the bowl. And I found it so much easier now with what you said today. That just further resonates even further, that I'm literally attaching his spirit to the vessels that I'm using in order to perform. You know, the water was blessed before I put it in there. I always did it in a certain way. There was always a certain herb that was in the water, even though typically people don't use herbs with water when scrying. I had to have 3 herbs in there, otherwise I would receive nothing from it.
Right.
And now with going through this with you guys today, this has made so much more sense, and it's connecting a lot of dots that weren't there before.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Can I ask as to which what wasn't there before?
I guess it's the closed mind, so to speak. I connected the bowl with, if I wanted to speak with Frederick, I would use that bowl. That was the only bowl I would use, and he is the only spirit that I would, for want of a better word, call forth into the bowl.
Oh my God, exactly.
And you know, sometimes it would be crazy things like, okay, people have obviously heard of remote viewing, remote drawing, remote writing.
Absolutely.
I would write paragraphs in French, and I'm not the world's quickest writer. Yet if I used a black fountain pen, I would go through 24 pages in 10 minutes. And I literally had no control. So where you were saying about, you know, the passing of the spirit and the communion and so on and so forth, that now is all resonating. Whereas in the past, it was just a case of, okay, this is how I communicate. This is our way of talking. Exactly. Now I'm seeing the fuller picture. I'm able to now realize why that was important, why the opening phrase was always the same, and how we would always have parsley, we would always have basil, we would always have marjoram. Why those were significant, I don't know. But I was told, if you want to talk, this is how we do it.
That's beautiful.
And it was almost as if we were, I mean, I still talk with Frederick now, but the medium I use now is a pendulum, which, you know, is great. It doesn't allow me to do the remote writing like we used to, but I no longer have that bowl. That bowl got broken.
Gotcha.
And to me, when I buried the bowl, I, in a sense, buried a form of communication. So it was a case of, okay, I can no longer fulfill this version, so I have to adapt and find something else that you're prepared to work with me through. And it wasn't a simple process. I promise you, it took months and months and months before eventually he started talking to me again. We now have a new system, we now have a new ritual, so on and so forth. So yeah,
that's great. And what you can do too is, like, you can recreate different elements of it, because have you seen that Japanese art where they take broken bowls and they fill in the holes with gold and they put it back together?
I actually tried that. A friend of mine back in the UK was actually a silversmith.
Oh wow.
And I know Frederick had an affinity to silver. Now, I'm sure there's some correspondence somewhere that I'm not aware of with the silver. I mean, obviously, I know that silver, platinum group metal, the Planetary Association, so on and so forth. One thing he would never tell me was when he was born. But the things he was able to describe and the location he was able to describe, I've since seen it. I actually saw it 2 years ago in Savannah.
Wow.
I have seen I've seen the house of his master.
Okay. That's fantastic. When you are, so here's a couple of just tips on the metals, right? In the practice I was taught, silver is an absorption. Silver acts as a sponge for energy. Gold acts as immediate discharge. So if you're getting an immediate response, the use of gold in your work allows for that to flow through easier when you're doing projective magic, and using a bowl of water as a gateway through which to facilitate that communion. It essentially allows for a little bit of a portal to come through because of the different waters of the other world, right? There's 5, according to the ancient Greeks, there were 5 rivers of the dead: Acheron, Lethe, the other ones are spacing on the names of, but you create a medium of that, and then you use those herbs as a means to anchor the spirits of the plants, giving vital energy and life form to that moment, to that bowl of water, empowering it just enough for that spirit to come through so that he can take his hand in yours and write as if it was his hand. It's a really fun form of necromancy.
Okay. Now, that would be considered necromancy and not scrying, correct?
Yes, because you're dealing with a specific spirit that you have a name for that you can call up under a specific ritual time and time again.
Right. Okay. Okay.
What you write out as a result of that is the scrying, is the divination. What the act of the ritual is that you're doing, that is technically a necromantic divination, right?
Okay.
Yeah. It's really fun. They've been using conjuring bowls for spirits since the ancient world. Like there's I think it's Greek that they have it, but it's a spiral script that spirals down into the center of it, around the edges of it, and into the center. And it names the spirit, and it names the holy orders, and it names that spell that you're talking about. And that bowl and that bowl only is what they use for the communion of that spirit. It's in the PGM, which is the Greek magical papyri. So that method that you're talking about, bonding a spirit to a bowl, is ancient magic. It's as old as it gets. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the fact that you've come to it through a necromantic process, again, just goes to the efficacy of the system and these methods that the ancients used and what we can still use today. You know, you can bond a pendulum to your spirit. Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it'll take time because you don't facilitate the pathway through which the gate of the other world opens, right? You had the bowl, you had the prayer, you had everything you needed, and he could come around and it would draw him with the same symbolism and the same understanding of what a cup is responsible for. Giving wine, giving communion, giving community, giving unity between the spirit world and the physical world, between the natural world and the intangible world, right? It bonds all of those together by the fact that it's a vessel that holds fluid, but it's the generations of associations that you're pulling on as well. So the more that you can incorporate that, the easier it would be. That's absolutely fantastic, Paul.
Superb.
Like, well done, bro. Like, well fucking done.
I need to talk with you guys more frequently. I really do.
This is why the Academy of Sorcery project and my work with the Grey School is so important, is because getting this information into people's hands that's already working with this stuff just helps refine their process to get it better. Like, you don't have to do what I tell you. You just have to explore it in your own way and see how it corresponds, which is exactly what you've been doing. And so I'm glad that I've been able to help.
Yeah, you again, yeah, taking it to another level. No more read a book. It's a case of get down nitty gritty and do magic.
Exactly. There's only so much the books will tell you until actual practice hits it, right? The practical experiences are so much more important. So much more important. Also, the
That's
shape
right.
of the glass. Like I've got clock faces in the convex shape, right? So it acts as a giant bowl. So I'll pour in the water into that, and then I'll put the herbs or whatever. But I do take ink and I do write spells around the edges of it and bond things into that liquid medium that I'm using as a pathway from this world to the other world. And so you can draw out your array patterns or your sigil designs or your gate opening spells and all of that onto these pieces of glass. And then you put in your dirt, and then you put in your herbs, and then you put the candles or the anchors around it and such. I showed you some pictures of it yesterday.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what was done. It was using that in combination with, see, as a necromancer, I have some really interesting tools that I've been able to acquire over the years. One of them was a bottle with a screw top that was salvaged from a cemetery. And so I put rainwater in that bottle in order to get a channel to the other world, right? Well, I also use human remains, so I was able to get human ribs, and I put one of those in there. So I use that for the conjuration of the River Lethe, right? So when I'm doing a separation, or if I'm doing something that needs to have a spirit purified by a specific washing clean, so to speak, that's the intermediary that I use. And so when I'm calling forth spirits for redemption or purification and things like that, I will use water that's had grave dirt, has associations with the other side, association with the land that receives the dead, and the water that flows upon it as the means by which that spirit can be purified or cleansed or washed clean of that event in my work. And so using that as a conjuring portal through which other spirits can come is also part of it. So I do incorporate the necromantic aspect of it very heavily when I do certain kinds of work. And being aware of those kinds of things as well is you can use wine, and you can use that water, and you can use fresh water, or you can use river water, or you can use ocean water, or you can use rainwater, or you can use lake water, or you could use the water from the well of St. Bridget, right? All of those different waters have different capacities for manifestation. And so it's what is going to be the specific thing that you're going to do when you apply it to the cup, when you apply it to your surface, your bowl, your intermediary, the container of the spirit in that case. And so the fact that you were using that as a scrying surface and as a scrying intermediary is just beautiful, man. Like, absolutely astounding.
You know what just came to my mind when you said that?
What?
You were talking about, what is a particular space of water? What's it considered?
What's the space of water?
What is a particular space of water considered?
What?
A body. A body of water.
There you go.
You're talking about it, and I'm just like, right there. It's like
a body of water. It is a behavior. Well, I mean, this is why it's so important to, like, in certain traditions, to give honor when you're collecting these things, is because you're honoring the vital fluid, the life blood of that region with that water, right? You take from it, you have to give to it, right? And so, like, this is why I love the Polaro friends that I've got, when they go out into the swamps and they pull out swamp water for me, or, they're harvesting hurricane water and rainwater and storm water and all this shit, right? And it's like, all of that has a vital spirit to it. And that's what we transfer into different cleansings, into different baths, into different blends of summoning or banishing or killing or whatever it is that we're doing. It's to put life or death into a situation. And by water, you can do that. Because for so long, people couldn't drink the water because they didn't know they had to boil it, or they didn't know they had to mix it with wine in order to sterilize it, or they didn't know all of the things that live inside of water. Like, water is fucking gross out in nature.
I don't drink water.
I try not to.
I drink green tea with ginseng and honey. And let me tell you, that is the best thing for my immune system.
Yeah, I drink a lot of tea. Also, I should be drinking more water, but I'm also trying to cut out sugar. So it's like, just tea is.
I haven't ate sugar in every 2 years.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. It's just, you know, so much shit. So much shit.
Being a heart patient, you learn to, change your diet.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I follow the writings of King Solomon in that era. So I don't take pharmaceuticals. Everything I medicate with is naturally. It comes from Mother Earth. Being a male witch, I count on Mother Nature instead of man. Man has made many errors. I don't trust man.
Yeah.
I mean, I trust Mother Nature. She's been keeping stuff alive for centuries, billions of years. Like,
I believe in a healthy union of both. But that gets into semantics
maybe
about, the science behind, like, let's not kill the planet off.
Maybe the older stuff, yeah, but today it's all pseudoscience. It's junk, man.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have like Nikola Tesla and all them back, Einstein. That was true science. That was facts.
And the thing is like the unification of the science behind why something is poison or why something is beneficial is also important when you study the things of the cups, right? Is this going to be a glass of something that will enhance, or is this something that is going to be something that will take away? Is it going to be a poison for you? Is it going to be a healthy thing for you? And that's what people need to take into account when they take into themselves, into their own body, into their own ecosystem, right? You're adding something outside of it in. And so when it comes to alcohol and things like that, like the purification rites of the ancients, it's abstain from alcohols, abstain from certain foods, abstain from all of these things in order to get your system purified so that you can handle the interaction between you and the spirits that you're dealing with and inviting in. So in a high magic sense, which is the only thing I'm really going to focus in on this conversation as we wrap it up, is that it really is important that what you do and why you're incorporating something that you put into a chalice, and if you're going to consume it, or if you're going to use it as an offering, or if you're going to use it as a scrying surface, everything that you do with that, consider what it's applied for. Consider the ingredients, why they're important. Consider why you would say something, why you would put it in a specific direction, why you would invite things to you. Like, what's the bigger purpose? What's the bigger picture? And what you were saying, Paul, is that you had a specific spirit that you were interacting with. Through it, and through that ritual that you created with it, it took over your hand, and it allowed you to write in a way that you would not otherwise normally do. It allowed you to channel information that you would not otherwise have. And that's the exact kind of thing that's setting up these rituals perfectly, like you did, organically. Specifically organically. Like, you didn't go to the books and you didn't study for this stuff. You applied this stuff, and you go to the books to reinforce your foundations.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's strange what you say with reference to the conduit, because I mean, my handwriting normally looks like a spider that's having an epileptic fit. Yet when Frederic was writing, it was very elaborate, very script-like. Yet I know, obviously from speaking French, that some of the words I was writing were misspelled. And doing research, I kind of think I know what's happened in the past, because obviously I've kept all of these writings that I've done, and I go back and I read them, and it's almost as if a story is being told. And be it my hand, be it the fact that when I use green ink, when I use red ink, unless it's black ink, it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
And to this day, 9.5 years later, I'm still trying to work out the significance of black ink. I don't know. I've tried asking, but got no answers.
Now, you're using a black ink, and the words are misspelled. And are they the consistent misspellings?
Absolutely consistent.
Okay. Now, my question for you is, what time period were those words spelled like that in common language?
in common language, late 17th, early 18th century French.
Okay. And the common ink at the time would have been black ink.
Yeah, I would assume.
It would probably be made with like an iron gall ink, something that could be easily mass produced. Something would be soot based, lamp black based, things like that. So it would have to be an ink that the individual could produce.
Whoa, whoa. Can you just say what you just said again?
That the lamp black, the iron gall ink, the ink of the late 1700s, the stuff that he could easily produce on his own, or the stuff that was mass produced at the time, would have been of similar natures.
You used the word soot, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Soot mixed with urine would create an ink.
Soot mixed with blood,
or urine would create an ink that would allow for the writing to occur. Like back in the peasant days of early inking and things like that, you can find calligraphy inks and things that they could use as a thinner, but it would also act as a preservative so it wouldn't rot or mold or discolor.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
More
I
research.
have to double check my sources, but yeah. But anyway, I appreciate you guys coming. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And stop the recording. And I wish everybody a fantastic afternoon. And thank you for those that are joining us on the replay. Stay safe, my friends. And remember, don't be evil.